And this is what he had to say about his future at Manchester City, because we know that he's perhaps not been playing as much as he'd like to be playing in terms of first team and starting. He says this: if there was the opportunity to go somewhere else for more game time, I would be open to it. He says dreams are to go abroad as well. As an English player, all I know is the Premier League, and I've always thought one day I would love to play abroad, see how I would come up against that challenge. If I want my happiness at a certain level, I need to be playing football and I need to be scoring goals and enjoying myself. Now, we know, Simon, that he has been in contract negotiations over a new deal at Manchester City. That seems to have stalled somewhat. What do you make of this position that Raheem Sterling has now put himself in by declaring perhaps this openness to moving on? Is this a tactic by him, do you think, to either force through a negotiation or maybe even just to force through a move elsewhere?
My biggest disappointment, it doesn't arrive on a Wednesday when Trevor's here talking all things blue and how world-class Raheem Sterling is and how he must be at Man City. But look, I mean, I think it's a pretty badly kept secret in football that Raheem Sterling has been potentially offered out by Man City during the summer. The market doesn't allow someone to pay the price that Man City wants because A, people don't have the money, and B, the natural destinations certainly don't have the money in the Spanish league. It is a positioning. It's interesting where it's landed inside of Financial Times. I don't know why that would be the case, but it may just simply be a coincidence that they're doing an article on the business of football, and up comes
one of the summit, so he was doing a live interview on that.
Okay, so with that in mind, Trevor's adamant that he's going to go out on loan and likely to go out on loan to Barcelona in January. I'm not sure how that works because Barcelona are hamstrung by the obligations of reducing their wage bill down to 84 million euros, which is less than Burnley play their players with respect. So you're comparing Barcelona to a wage bill less than Burnley's. So how he fits into that structure, the idea that somehow Man City are going to subsidise his wages, I think, why would they do that? They would want the wage recovery unless there's some goodwill gesture there. It actually goes more to the centre of why is Raheem Sterling not featuring in Pep Guardiola's plans and hasn't done for some time. I mean, the Jack Grealish argument will come to play now that Jack Grealish has been signed and subsequently has to be played, but I'm not sure that's Pep Guardiola's MO. He plays players that are the best at what they're doing at that particular time. I mean, I've always been of the mindset that Raheem Sterling is a decent player but has been inflated to levels that he's not at. But that's a different discussion. The fact that he's opening the minds of people to suggest that there is a move that's likely to happen or he needs to play more football, which clearly is obvious. You can't not want to play more football. You're in a World Cup year or close to a World Cup year, so 12 months away. Obviously, it's in the following season, but notwithstanding that, he'll want to be playing competitive football as much as he possibly can. I think it makes an interesting read, and I think it clearly indicates that he is on the cusp of perhaps cutting ties with Man City one way or t'other. The problem for him is, where is the natural destiny? Because he talks about Italy and he talks about learning Spanish and liking those particular languages, but to land at Barcelona or to land at Real Madrid with the current restrictions they have, and of course the world turns and they can get back to an economic footing that's probably different in a year's time, and this time next year we might be talking about something completely different for the Spanish giants. But right now it's an unfortunate set of timing because people cannot afford to pay what either the cost implications of buying Sterling out of a contract with 2 years to go may be from a transfer fee point of view, or B, what he may want as a salary.
Martin, from a player's perspective, when you're hearing what Sterling is saying by saying he's open to a move, is that the right thing? Should players be doing that, so vocal, so open about it?
I mean, sometimes I think a bit of honesty doesn't hurt. I think he has also said he doesn't want to be a problem for his manager.
Yeah, he did say that, yeah.
He wants to play. He is an outstanding player. Foden is the player now that's stopping him getting in the team competition for places. He hasn't featured. I think he's only started 2 Premier League games this season. He is a player that is progressively getting better. The number of goals that he's certainly scored for the national team, I think it's 13 goals in the last 24 caps. So there's an improvement in the player. Didn't have the best of games for England in midweek. Perhaps he was playing, again, I thought he was playing out of position actually on that left-hand side. It's probably his best position. So it was difficult for him. Played the Champions League final last year, almost as if the manager said, right, go on then. You're playing. Show me, you're good enough. It didn't quite happen. So players want to play. At the end of the day, you work all week. You know, you're made to feel special, but you don't feel special sitting on the bench. He wants to start games, whether it be at Man City or somewhere else. And he's just, it may be the first step about thinking about going somewhere else. But ultimately, he can break back into that team anytime sooner, because Grealish is playing on that left. He might be at a bit of a crossroads, Grealish. He might be moved into a more central position. So I think the door's still open for Sterling, but it's about performances on the pitch. He's going to have to prove it, but he needs that opportunity. And I think he'll get it with Pep Guardiola.
But as an owner, say, Simon, your owner's hat on, would you be happy reading about this?
In an ideal world, you want to keep as much within the confines of the building that you own as you possibly can. In the real world, where you have to live, it's not realistic. What you want to see is respectful discourse, i.e. people talking about things in a pragmatic way. And the fact that he's qualified, the fact that he wants more game time, and he may have to go out on loan, and that he isn't going to be a problem to the manager, are part and parcel of a balanced perspective. You know, is it wise? I don't know. I mean, look, the bottom line is, as an owner, and certainly an owner of Man City, you know, with the greatest respect in the world, there's a different dynamic at play here. If you're an owner of a football club where your assets determine your future to some extent, and you need to maintain that asset value and you need to protect your position because the economics of your business depend upon it, that's one thing. When you've got people that can drop Raheem Sterling's salary out of their pocket on the way to the game, it becomes less of a thing. It becomes more about an order in the dressing room and how a football club will operate. But I don't really feel that Raheem Sterling has done anything particularly wrong. Mm-hmm. If you ask him a question, what do you want? Do you want people to give answers, or do you want them to be robots? Do you want them to be mindful of the environment that they're in and be respectful of the parameters of their contractual obligations, and at the same time be honest and answer, or do you not? And I think there's nothing wrong, really, with what Raheem Sterling saying.
If he was playing, he'd be a bit like Diaz, Stones and Foden, who've all just signed brand new deals. Stones signed that, didn't he, before he didn't start the season, and he's played exceptionally well. I thought he was England's probably standout player in midweek with that. You know, that goal was really important. Also, what he's doing in the build-up to the play. So he can't even get in the Man City team at the moment. So it's slightly different for each player. But I see that Sterling is getting really frustrated at the moment. But transfer that frustration then onto the pitch when he gets his next opportunity. That's what I want to see.
You're absolutely right to say that he has said he's not going to cause a problem. He says, I'm not a person that's going to complain. I've not tried to make it a bigger deal than it actually is. I just get on with my work, do what I need to do, and I'm just raring to go. I'm focused on playing football matches regularly and hopefully scoring goals regularly as well. Could we look at this slightly from a different angle as well? By maybe he doesn't want to leave. Maybe he does want to stay, and this is all part of his contract negotiations, trying to force a bit of Manchester City's hand in this.
Possibly. I mean, I think the bigger concern has to be why he doesn't feature within the confines of Pep Guardiola's thinking, because arguably Manchester City are the best team in Europe. I know they haven't won the Champions League, but for football and for the purity of their football and for the quality of their football and certainly for the cut of the jib of their manager, they are in that category of being, if not the best team, one of the best teams. And the fact that he isn't, and it was before Jack Grealish arrived, the argument's being run by people that Jack Grealish has moved him to one side. He wasn't getting a gig before Grealish arrived. Now, I'm not sure if this is right, but I'm going to say it. I wonder if the competition he's played against at international level at times isn't quite as good as the competition he plays in domestic level. I know that if they play Burnley, of course, playing Germany and Ukraine won't be, or Italy won't be comparable. But he finds it difficult to get in a Man City side. And that's almost a degradation of the Raheem Sterling brand. Brand isn't probably the right word, but image and iconography about a player that people keep on, and I'm not in this camp, for no other reason than I have an objective view which is different to others, which I don't believe is world class. And I think the idea that we build him up as world class does him no favour, because he isn't really at that level. He's a very good player. And anyone that signs from Man City has to be a good player. Is
he world class, Martin? You're ready to say something?
Well, what I was going to say was that I just feel that with Guardiola, it's almost like a father, isn't it? You know, the young child is born, the next one that comes along, he loves that little bit more than the one before, which is Grealish now. Sterling, do you know, where he was sort of like, you've seen him many times, quite animated, you know, trying to get him to listen. And he took it on board brilliantly. And now all of a sudden, he's the child that, you know, he's a little bit of an older child. New one's come in the door, and he's just been
for adoption.
He's been excluded a little bit. He doesn't feel loved. And he kind of like wants that love back again from the manager. And when they pick you, you know they love you. And that's all it is. It can be just a flick of and then it could be Grealish that we're talking about, saying, well, it hasn't really quite happened for Grealish. It's not quite taken off. He's a bit of a tricky moment. And that's how it is in the life of a professional footballer. So it's about character and personality. And that's what, it might be tough love a little bit here from Pep Guardiola, but I'm pretty certain there's a quality player there. And they will be a lot weaker, their squad, if he was to leave. They don't want to be losing the rights of Sterling from that football club. They're building something really big there.
talkSPORT Breakfast with Alan Brazil. Thursday and Friday morning, 6 till 10. On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.